Today, I'm going to show you a neuroscience-based method that will drastically reduce the time you spend studying and allow you to multiply the amount of information you actually remember. And most importantly, it will help you remember it for life. Have you ever studied for hours only to realize 2 days later that it feels like you learned nothing at all? It happens to everyone, and the reason is simple. There's a biological barrier in the brain that blocks learning when it happens too fast. The human brain is an incredible machine. The problem is that we've always been taught to study the wrong way. Repeating, highlighting, reading, and rereading are all useful strategies, but they're not enough to break through that barrier. Today, I'll show you how to bypass it. I'll explain a simple 4-step method based on how your brain actually works that will help you memorize faster, remember longer, and overcome the barrier that blocks rapid learning. And if you stay until the end, I'll also show you 6 additional techniques to dramatically improve the way you study, giving you a real competitive advantage over everyone else. After watching this video, you'll never study the same way again. So if you want to stop wasting time and learn how to absorb information like a sponge, stay with me. We learn thanks to neuroplasticity, which is the brain's physical ability to change in response to experience. Every time you learn something new, tiny connections called synapses form between neurons. The more you repeat or practice something, the stronger those connections become. Imagine each new piece of information as a thin thread connecting two neurons. If you repeat it, that thread becomes a path. If you keep going, it turns into a highway. This process is called long-term potentiation, and it's the foundation of neuroplasticity. However, there's an important biological limit. The brain has a barrier that prevents it from storing too much new information too quickly. This mechanism exists to protect the brain from changes that are too rapid and potentially harmful. Have you ever reached the end of a line or a paragraph without understanding anything you just read, especially when studying dense material? That sensation is exactly this biological limit at work. So, how do we get around it? The brain processes information more easily when 3 fundamental conditions are met, and you need to maximize all 3. Intention, actively wanting to learn and making an effort to understand and remember. Relevance, how much the new information affects what you already know or other concepts you're learning. Familiarity, how similar what you're learning is to something you already know. The brain is a predictive machine. It understands things better when it can connect them to existing knowledge. Studying completely new information is like trying to hang a painting in midair. It's impossible because there's no wall. Increasing familiarity makes new information clearer by linking it to what you already know. Increasing relevance means showing the brain why that information actually matters and how it can be used in real life. The problem is that usually the only one of these 3 conditions we can naturally control is intention. So how can we artificially increase familiarity and relevance in order to study effectively and remember information long-term? Through a 4-part method, which I'll explain now. But before I do, there's something important you need to know. Many people watch content like this, but very few actually apply what they learn. And that's the difference between those who succeed and those who don't. If you want to be among the few who truly change their lives, subscribe now and leave a like. Here, you'll find practical, science-based strategies to improve your mind, habits, and finances one day at a time, and become the person you never thought you could be. Now, here's the method. Part 1. Simple terms. Simplifying reduces mental energy cost and increases learning speed. When you simplify, you're not dumbing things down. You're building the foundations you'll need to understand more complex concepts later. In the first minutes of studying, your brain is trying to map the new topic. If the information is too complex, the brain simply can't absorb it. You need to rephrase concepts in simpler terms first, removing technical jargon. This dramatically increases familiarity. You can use artificial intelligence to explain key terms in plain language, making complex topics far more accessible. Using tools like Google Images or apps like Napkin to create visual schemas can also help, because visual processing is much more efficient than reading. Part 2. Layering. The brain builds new concepts by attaching them to existing ones. You don't learn by adding information, you learn by integrating it. This means you need to intentionally take control of your learning. As you read, focus on the parts that feel more familiar or relevant. Learn those first and connect them to what you already know while skipping unfamiliar or irrelevant details and coming back to them later. This works because when you return to the skipped sections after internalizing the more familiar concepts, they'll be much easier to understand. You'll already have a solid foundation. If you study linearly from start to finish, you'll often encounter concepts that are too difficult for your current level, unconnected to what you already know, and without the necessary groundwork to understand them. The result? Cognitive overload, frustration, and loss of motivation. Layering works because it helps you build a strong foundation, reduce mental load, and increase familiarity. Part 3. Relevance. Before storing any information, the brain asks a simple question. Do I need this? Will this improve my life in any way? But when you ask yourself questions like, in what situations could this be useful? What problem could this help me solve? You activate decision-making, emotional, and motivational brain areas that help create memory anchors. It's like telling your brain, pay attention, this information has value, store it. Think of learning as solving a puzzle. You must actively place each new piece within the larger picture of what you already know. Part 4. Mental space. This concept is highly underrated. Your ability to analyze and process information, just like a computer, is limited. You can only handle a certain amount of information at once. You could use the best learning technique in the world, but if you overload your working memory, nothing will stick. Every time you try to remember everything mentally, you steal resources from reasoning. When you write things down, it's like freeing up processor space by offloading information into another type of memory. It's like cleaning your brain's internal hard drive, improving analytical ability and reducing mental fatigue. So, take notes. Write down thoughts and gaps instead of forcing yourself to remember everything. And now comes the most interesting part. To make sure the information encoded with this method turns into long-term memory, you need to optimize 6 key factors. 1. Attention. Attention is essential for learning. Simply focusing fully on a task greatly increases the chance of remembering that information, especially long-term. That's because we're designed to focus on one thing at a time. The problem is that today, we rarely train our attention. Frequent social media use causes measurable attention deficits, especially in adolescents who use it for extended periods. So how can you improve attention? You might not believe it, but short-term attention improves with physical exercise. Studies show that just 20 minutes of moderate exercise, like walking, can increase attention for the next 2 hours. Exercise can also increase the size of brain areas involved in learning and memory, and it promotes the growth of new brain cells. 2. Focus. If you're not fully focused, retaining information becomes much harder. Activating the sympathetic nervous system, the fight or flight system, releases chemicals like adrenaline and noradrenaline that increase alertness. Beyond exercise, you can increase alertness through breathing techniques, meditation, or even a cold shower. Studies also show that a small amount of stress can enhance learning. However, chronic stress or prolonged stress physically alters the brain and impairs learning and memory. If you're going through a long period of stress, your memory will suffer. Nutrition also matters. Substances like caffeine improve alertness. On the other hand, studying after a heavy meal is counterproductive because the body shuts down the fight or flight system to focus on digestion. 3. Sleep. Sleep is essential for memory consolidation, the process that turns short-term memories into long-term ones. The hippocampus is a brain structure crucial for learning and memory. It records experiences like a diary, but only temporarily. During sleep, short-term memories are transferred to other brain areas and stabilized. Without sleep, this transformation can't happen. That's why studying late into the night or pulling all-nighters is one of the worst things you can do if you want to remember information long-term. After studying, prioritize sleep.
4th, repetition. Repetition is essential for learning. Just as physical exercise builds muscle, repeated patterns of thought or action strengthen neural pathways and connections, making recall easier. Think of information as a thread connecting 2 neurons. The brain doesn't want to invest energy in creating new connections because they require fatty acids, proteins, and other resources. Repetition signals to the brain that the information is important and worth keeping. To repeat effectively, you need to space learning across multiple days. Studies show that two short learning sessions on different days lead to significantly better retention than the same amount of time crammed into one day. Number 5, breaks. Breaks are incredibly important for two main reasons. Number 1, unconscious replay. Breaks allow the brain to unconsciously replay newly learned information. For example, after learning a piano sequence, a short break lets the brain replay it many times, often faster than before. Number 2, memory stability. Newly encoded information is unstable. If you immediately use the same neural networks to learn something else, especially something similar, the previous memory can be overwritten in a process called retroactive interference. Make sure to take a 10 to 20-minute break after studying. Avoid similar material for at least an hour, and if possible, study it on a different day. Number 6, errors. Contrary to what you've been told, making mistakes is essential for learning thanks to something called the neuroplasticity window. The anxiety or stress you feel when you make a mistake releases neuromodulators like acetylcholine, which increase attention. That anxiety tells the brain, you made a mistake, adapt and improve. This opens a window for neuroplasticity, the memory formation process we talked about at the beginning. But there's also a wrong way to handle mistakes. If you make a mistake and avoid the activity because it feels uncomfortable, you won't learn, and you'll also teach your brain the wrong way to deal with failure. A powerful exercise is to test yourself with quizzes on what you're studying. This has a double benefit. When you make a mistake, neuromodulators increase attention. When you answer correctly, dopamine is released in reward circuits, boosting motivation and consolidating learning. This turns learning into a true win-win for the brain. Now, you're probably thinking, wow, I'll start doing this tomorrow. I'm sorry to tell you this, but if that's what you're thinking, you're about to waste everything you just learned. Because there's one mistake that will make the last 10 minutes completely useless. It's that little voice in your head saying, I'll do it tomorrow. Now isn't the right time. That voice is responsible for wasted years, postponed dreams, and lives that never change. The problem isn't knowing what to do. The real problem is doing it every day without quitting. And without a system that makes you consistent, you'll inevitably end up right back where you started. The good news is that such a system exists, and it's the reason why the most successful people in the world, the ones you admire and envy, who've achieved goals that seem unreachable, are where they are today. It's called the Kaizen method. It's a Japanese system that remained largely unknown for years. In the next video, I'll show you exactly how to apply it to your life so that 1 year from now, you can look in the mirror and see a version of yourself you can't even imagine today. So click on the video, subscribe, and leave a like because your journey toward achieving all your goals starts now.